All right, welcome back to the Find Your 20 Coaching Insight Show. I'm your host, Mark Sabercrop, and if you're a six-figure business owner who's looking to unlock the hidden potential in your business, then you've come to the right place, because this is the show where I share the top insights from recent coaching sessions that I've had with my clients, as well as my personal experiences, to help you throw out the 80% that's holding you back, so that you can build a business that fits you and your strengths and supports your personal dreams and goals. But before we get started today, I want to share with you today's featured resource, which is ConvertKit. ConvertKit is my preferred email system, email service provider to communicate with your audience. I've used it for years. I actually looked back the other day and I started using it in 2016. So I've been using it for 6 years now. I think it actually only launched in 2015. So I've been using it for quite some time. And now, on top of using it personally for my coaching business, I actually just started using it with my family's restaurant. We're just starting to do some marketing and email marketing, as my wife and I are getting more into helping manage it with my in-laws. And I got to tell you, it has been one of the most simple, easy things that I've ever done in setting that up. Going from a list of nothing and being able to set up a list, set up the automations that allow us to market as automatically and as systemized as possible, and to be able to prepare for the future, like to be able to create landing pages and to be able to create products and subscriptions and all of those types of things. I'm super excited to be using ConvertKit because it allows me to do it all right there. It's so simple. It's been simple to set up. It's been amazing. And I'm super excited to be using it there as well. So now I'm using it in my personal business, and I'm also using it in our family's restaurant, and I can't recommend it highly enough. So if you're looking for an easy to use solution for your email marketing that also does landing pages and order forms and products, then I would highly recommend taking a look at ConvertKit. And you can learn more about ConvertKit, and you can actually get started with a free trial by going to findyour20.com/ConvertKit. That's all one word, ConvertKit, and you can get it there and start your free trial. You can also see all of my recommended resources by going to findyour20.com/my-best-resources. And with that, I have 3 things that I want to share with you this week. And I have to tell you, it was hard to narrow it down because I spent last Friday and Saturday at a conference. And as happens, every time I go to one of these conferences, I get a million ideas, I get super excited, and there's tons that comes up because of it. And you'll actually notice in the intro to this podcast, it actually changed a little bit. And that's from the things that I learned and the things that I worked on and workshopped and masterminded about over that conference, during that conference. That's where some of that change came from. Some of the messaging and the way that I'm talking about what I'm doing has changed. One, because I had conversations with people, and when I was sharing what I did, the way that I've been trying to explain it, people were misunderstanding. And I was finding myself getting kind of put into a box that I didn't want to be put in. You know, I got put into the box of systems and of productivity, which makes sense because that's a big portion of what Find Your 20 is about. However, there's so much more to what I do. And it's really about unlocking the hidden potential in your business and helping you to find those leverage points that can make a massive impact in your business so that you can increase your revenue by 50% or double your revenue, or be able to design a business that fits more with your personality and your strengths and your lifestyle. And that's really what it comes down to. I was actually talking to one of my clients and I said, I feel like it's more of like an advisor really than even a coach. And her response was, you're a strategist. And so I'm really hanging on to that and grabbing hold of that idea of being a business strategist rather than simply a business coach. So anyways, all of that to say, it was hard to narrow down everything that I wanted to share in the podcast this week. I'm going to be spending every single day on the Hidden 20 talking about things that I learned while I was at that conference. So you can check that out as well. That's not one of the resources I was talking about today, but you can find that at findyour20.com/hidden20. And you can learn more about that. I'm sharing every single weekday insights, ideas, thoughts, things that I'm doing in my business on the Hidden 20 Audio Mastermind. So you can check that out there as well. But today I want to talk about 3 things. And the first one is I had the realization that we're doing a planning exercise during this retreat towards the end of it, or during this conference towards the end of it. And the thought that came to my mind was that calls and commitments that we do and have on our calendar are like debt for our time. Now, let me explain what I mean. When you think about debt, like physical financial debt, I've heard people describe it as spending money in advance. What happens is when you use a credit card or you get a loan, essentially you're spending that amount of money every single month until that loan's paid off. So if I get a credit card and now the credit card payment is $100, I've in advance spent $100 of my income every single month until that's paid off. I've spent that in advance, and that's what debt is. And I realized during this training session that that's exactly what calls and commitments are as well on our calendar. We've spent our time in advance. So if we commit to a weekly call for something, we've spent that time in advance. If we've committed to be in a mastermind group that has a weekly call or a bi-weekly call, we've spent that time in advance. If we book a call with somebody, we've spent that time in advance. If we make another appointment or another commitment, we've spent that time in advance. Now, I'm not saying we should never create those commitments. Obviously, we need to, and obviously there are times where that's important and necessary for our business, whether that's fulfilling our responsibilities to our clients, or it's making commitments to talk to prospects so that we can get more clients, or it's learning and being in groups and being taught and going to classes and things to up level what we're able to do. Those things are all important. My point is not that we shouldn't ever make those commitments. My point is that we need to recognize and realize that when we make those commitments, we are spending our time in advance. Maybe you've had this experience. I know I have, where I wake up one day and I look at my calendar for the day and I realize that I'm booked back to back to back to back with calls. And I start to think, when am I going to get my other work done? When am I going to create content? When am I going to follow up with prospects? When am I going to record a podcast episode? Whatever it is. If I've already spent that time, then I find myself scrambling to get the other things done that I want to get done. And so it behooves us to be intentional about what commitments and calls we are willing to accept. And not every commitment and call is created equal. And it's important that we plan to have time to focus on the things that are most important. Cal Newport talks about this in his book, Deep Work. We need to be able to make sure that we have time to do the deep work, to do the things that are most important. And that's where batching and, theming our days and those types of things comes in handy, is making sure that when we've made these commitments for our time, we still have time to do the important things outside of those commitments, the creative tasks, the other things that we need time in our schedule to do. So it's important for us to remember that calls and commitments are like debt for our time. And we need to make sure that we enter into them wisely and we know what we're doing, and we're doing it consciously rather than just haphazardly creating all of these extra commitments on our time in advance. So that's number one. Number two is something that came up recently when I was having a coaching call with my Hidden 20 Mastery students. And it's interesting because this is something I think about for myself a lot. And it's the idea that most of us, I won't say none of us, most of us don't need more knowledge. What we need to just freaking implement. We just need to do the work. And we can get so caught up in trying to get more knowledge that we never implement. It can be a fancy way of procrastinating. So a lot of times what happens is we think, oh, there's a new book, or there's a new course, or there's a new training, or there's a new webinar. I need to go listen to that, or read that, or watch that, or go through that, because it's going to have the thing I need. It's going to have the thing I need. It's going to be the thing that's going to change everything. And I can say that because I've felt that way and I've done that. I know that it's easy to get into that mindset, but in reality, you and I probably have everything we need to be as successful as we want to be. We probably have everything we need. And at the very least, we have enough to take the next step or several steps. And so when we get caught up in this mindset of taking another course, we can actually stunt our growth because we're not implementing. We're not implementing the things that we need to do now and the things that we know how to do. And we're just getting more and more and more and more knowledge. I heard Eric Thomas, E.T. the hip hop preacher, talk recently. I was listening to one of his tracks on Pandora, and he talked about how he would rather read one page in a book 100 times than read an entire 100-page book once. Because he said it's about implementation. He said the same thing. If we read that and we don't do it, what good was it? And so that's what I would encourage you to do. Some people are professional course takers. That's just what they do. There's course after course after course after course, but they don't ever implement. And one of the things I came away from this conference with this last week was the idea that I wanted to make this week a sprint week. I wanted to implement as much as possible of what I learned. Because if I don't, I'll lose it, and that knowledge will be useless. So it's all about implementation. And I think sometimes having those implementation sprints might be a really good thing to do. Like, get as much crap done as possible, start as many things as possible, get things moving as quickly as possible, and then go back and adjust and fix and tweak and stop the things that you don't want to do, but get into action. Magic happens when you're in motion. That's what my friend Richie Norton says. And it's so absolutely true. We don't need more knowledge. We don't. More than likely, if you're listening to this, you don't need more knowledge. You have enough knowledge. You haven't implemented the knowledge you have. So now it's time to just freaking implement. Just do it. Just put it into practice, the things that you have learned over the last week, over the last month, and then go learn something new. But implement first. Okay, number three. Number three is something that's interesting because I talk about this a lot. I've talked about it on this podcast. I talk about it in the Hidden 20 Audio Mastermind. I've talked about it with my clients. And it's one of those things, like a lot of things, that when other people do it, it's easy to see, it's easy to diagnose, and it's easy to address. But when it's happening to you, it's not nearly as easy. So what happened was this past weekend at this retreat, I keep saying retreat. I don't know why I keep saying retreat. At this conference, it wasn't a retreat. There was like 200 people there, 300 people there. So at this conference, based on the talks that were given, the sessions that we had, the things that I was learning, I walked away at the end of it, and I was telling my friend Robbie came with me, and I told him, I go, man, I really feel like what just happened was a stick of dynamite was lit and shoved into my business, and it's all going to blow up. I'm blowing it up and I'm starting over. That's the way I felt. And I felt this tension because I'm like, but I've put all this effort in. I've put all this work into writing this book and creating this course that goes with it and coaching around it and creating this podcast and all of these things. And oh my goodness, I can't do that. I can't just change. There's so much that I've put into it. And then I realized, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm dealing right now with sunk cost thinking. There we go. And I'm really I'm right in the middle of the sunk cost fallacy. The idea that because we've put all of this effort into something, we can't change now because we'll waste all of that. We can't stop doing something that's not working because we've put all this effort into it, which makes no sense whatsoever, because if it's not working, the worst thing you can do is keep putting effort into something that's not working. You need to stop it and do the things that are working. But I struggled and I struggled and I struggled with it. And what it came down to for me was realizing that I'm really not blowing up my business. Everything that I talk about in Find Your 20 is still completely accurate. Everything that I talk about is still things that I teach, but I need to address and adjust the messaging of how I teach it and why it's important, and how I speak to the people that I want to attract. That's the thing that's changing. And I realized that it was more of like it was just like a little pivot. It was a pivot, just an adjustment, just a tweak, rather than blowing up my whole business. But it was so interesting to recognize that, and to see myself dealing with this sunk cost mentality and not wanting to step into something new because of the effort that I'd put into the things that were old. And that's something that we all have to be aware of. We all have our pet projects, our pet courses, our pet products, our pet thinking, our pet ideas, our pet systems. And those pet ideas, thinking, systems, products, services, courses, whatever, if we're not willing to examine them objectively, can hold us back. by not being willing to step in and entertain the idea that there might be something beyond it, we're holding ourselves back. And I think all of us struggle with this at times. We all get comfortable. We all like certain things. We all like certain aspects of our businesses. We identify with those. And I think that's what makes this sunk cost fallacy so difficult, is we identify with it. I've got to the point where I very much identify with this book. And so looking at it in a different way, adjusting the way I talk about my business has been very, very difficult, because I feel like I'm giving up on something that I've put so much effort into. So where is sunk cost thinking showing up in your business? Where is the way that you've done things hindering the way that you should be doing things, or hindering the way that you want to be doing things? Where is the person that you were keeping you from being the person that you need to be? That is sunk cost thinking, holding on to the old, being scared to let go of the old and step into the new. That's sunk cost thinking, and it's impacting every single one of our businesses. I guarantee it. So where is it impacting your business, and how can you address it? And here's what I found. It's being willing to sit with the uneasiness. It's being willing to sit with the idea of possibly letting it go. When I was willing to sit with the idea of letting Find Your 20 go, was when I discovered that I don't have to let it go, that it does fit in with everything else I'm doing. But until I was willing to sit with that uneasiness, sit with that uncertainty, I wasn't able to see how it fit together. So that's really the commitment. It's not even to let go of the thing that's old or the thing that we're committed to. It's just sitting with the possibility of, what would that look like if I did? And once you're willing to do that, then a solution can come. And a lot of times it's just a slight pivot. It's just an adjustment rather than wholesale changes. But if it is wholesale changes, and that's what you need to step into, it's being willing to do that as well. So where are you stumbling over sunk cost thinking? Where is sunk cost thinking holding you back in your business? I guarantee you there's somewhere. Look for it, find it. It'll make an impact just sitting with that idea and considering what it might look like to step forward and to step past that. So with that, I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for following. If you haven't yet, please make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you leave a rating and review for the podcast, and make sure you grab a copy of my book, Find Your 20. If you haven't got a copy yet, make sure you grab one. Why haven't you got one yet? How long have you been listening? No, I'm kidding, but seriously, grab a copy of the book. I'd love to send a copy out to you. Just cover the shipping and handling. I'll cover the book. I'll make sure I get it to you. Just help me with the shipping and handling. And you can find that by going to findyour20.com/grab your copy. And with that, thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you next week on the podcast again. And until next time, get out there and chase your 20.